Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Today we're going to talk about drones, and stick with me, I'll explain later. And then we're going to discuss it together in the comments so you don't have to suffer alone and I don't have to suffer alone. So please leave your questions, suggestions, thoughts, anything you have on your mind down below. I read all of it and I greatly appreciate your feedback. Let's go. Before we begin today's news brief, I obviously need to address the situation that's been happening in Ukraine that has been a cause of a massive propaganda field trip, which are the protests against the Law 124/14. And that law is the law that basically takes away independence from the anti-corruption agencies in Ukraine. It is a very complex subject, and actually on Saturday in the evening, during our regular time of burning questions, me and operator Starsky are going to be diving in depth on this subject, on this issue, and we're going to be giving you all of the information you might need. Also, this weekend, we're going to be releasing my own personal podcast that you might have seen, and I might have mentioned on this channel before, Unmasking. So if you want more information, please do wait for those two releases and watch them. But long story short, there are two anti-corruption agencies in Ukraine that were created as independent as an aftermath of the Revolution of Dignity, and they were operating on their own. Now, some of their work is incredibly inefficient, and that is a fact. However, what the government did is they miscommunicated what they were trying to do, and they passed this law that has a lot of very questionable and very tricky parts to it that are, to say the least, unlikable to the Ukrainian people. They take away the independence from the agencies that are supposed to investigate the government and corruption in the government, and they make them subservient to the government. And also they have a couple of provisions in these laws that just kind of backslide democracy. Therefore, Ukrainian people came out to protest, and we are wanting this law to be removed. We want this law to be canceled, and we want these agencies to stay independent. A reform is needed. We all understand it. We're also underwhelmed with the amount of progress that happened with these agencies in the past 10 years, but the way that it was done is just not the way. It does seem like the government has heard us, and it's a good example of democracy in action because Zelensky did come out yesterday and did say that he has had various meetings with all of the heads of all of the law enforcement agencies, and they're working on a plan, and a new law is going to be drafted within 2 weeks, and the parliament is going to vote on it. Now, we can only hope that the government is going to have way better communication skills, and they're going to give us an action plan. They're going to walk us through everything they're thinking, and they're going to do a way better job at keeping the people informed, because otherwise it's just going to result in the same situation as Ukrainian people taking to the streets and demanding justice and demanding accountability. Now, the propaganda worldwide has been taking these protests and making them look like anti-government protests, anti-Zelensky protests, anti-war protests, or anti-fighting protests, and the protests for peace talks with Russia. None of that is true. No one is calling to remove Zelensky. No one is calling to remove the government. We are calling to reconsider this law. We are calling to change the provisions in this law, and we are calling to keep these agencies independent. So I did really need to mention this because I feel like if I didn't, it would look like we are avoiding the subject, and we absolutely are not. But I don't think 10 minutes of a news brief is a proper environment to explain all of the complexities of what is going on, how we got here, and what the solutions can be, and what we hope is going to happen from us protesting. So again, if you want to know more, please do wait for the releases of the two videos that I mentioned earlier. Anyways, now on to drones. While there are rounds of negotiations on prisoner exchanges and peace talks in Istanbul with Russia, Russia has initiated a massive drone strike onto Odesa and hit a UNESCO-protected market. It's called Privoz market, and it was hit on the night of July 22nd, 23rd, and it is a historic market in Odesa. It's one of the liveliest and loveliest places in Odesa. It's one of the most touristy places in Odesa. It's under UNESCO protection. Several fires broke out in residential areas and gas stations, and civilian casualties were reported as well during the drone strike. In response, Ukrainian drones targeted Russian facilities, including a refinery near Sochi and Adler. At least one person was killed in the retaliatory strike. The attacks highlighted the fragile backdrop of diplomatic negotiations occurring simultaneously in Turkey. And again, while it was a retaliatory strike, it was a strike on military infrastructure. It was a strike on facilities that help conduct the war, not on highly populated civilian areas. And when I do say Russia targets highly populated civilian areas, I mean it because Privoz is one of the most populated places in Odesa. It is a very lively market where you can buy food, you can buy anything you can imagine there. It is a historic place. It's one of the busiest areas in Odesa altogether. So hitting that market is a deliberate strike to target as many people, as many civilians as possible. Also, in not necessarily particularly a retaliatory strike, but in drone news, Ukrainian drones hit a Russian railway and power facilities in Rostov region. In the early hours of July 23rd, Ukrainian drones carried out coordinated strikes on logistical and energy infrastructure in Russia's Rostov region. Targets included the railway hub and the Novocherkassk power thermal plant. The goal was to disrupt the transport of ammunition, fuel, and military equipment to the front lines. Despite Russia's claim of shooting down over 50 drones, Ukrainian strikes caused fires and power disruptions, indicating direct hits on strategic targets. So again, this is military infrastructure. I do really want to stress that every time I talk about Ukraine's drone strikes on Russia, because unlike Russia's drone strikes on Ukraine, which feature Shahed drones, which are about two average tall man in height standing on top of each other. It's basically like an SUV launching into you. So anytime a Shahed drone flies into a building, imagine like a Subaru Outback launching into your building and exploding. That's pretty much what that is equivalent to. Russia targets civilians, Russia destroys lives, Russia ruins apartment buildings, Russia targets gas stations, public markets, shopping malls, supply stores. Russia targets places where many civilians gather, and Russia targets places where people sleep at night, their apartments, their personal spaces, while Ukraine only targets infrastructure that's directly responsible for being able to conduct these strikes on Ukraine and killing that many people. Also, Russian drones rely heavily on Chinese components, it seems. Recent intelligence reports reveal that many Russian drones, especially Shahed-type variants, are built using up to 60 to 65% Chinese-made components. Surprise, surprise. These include DLE engines, Fox-Ear FPV cameras, CUAV control systems, KST servos, and HRB power batteries. Investigations have uncovered a scheme where Chinese engines are shipped to Russia disguised as industrial cooling units to evade sanctions. These parts are assembled at facilities like Kupol plant to produce combat drones at a growing scale. In 2025, Russia is expected to manufacture over 6,000 drones, triple the output of the previous year, which, that makes a lot of sense given that it used to be that Russian drone attacks would be 140 to 200 drones maybe in Ukraine's airspace during a singular attack. And I mean, by airspace, I mean like all of Ukraine, right? Recently, we've had from 450 to about 700 drones, or over 700 drones, flying onto Kyiv alone. So that's a huge number of drones. That's triple the amount that we've seen before, and it is incredibly deadly. It's very disruptive. These drones are a lot harder to intercept because they fly at much lower altitudes, and they cause a lot of damage. I've said this before, but I used to not necessarily react to drone air raids as much. And now I do, because last time I sat in my garage for 6.5 hours and I kept hearing drones flying and then exploding, and I heard it underground. That used to not be the case because they were flying higher, they were being intercepted higher, and now it does, even when you're in the garage, if you're underground, it's still, you still hear all of the sounds of explosions. And it's very, very evident that Russia is getting their supplies from other countries, that Russia is evading sanctions, that countries are helping Russia evade sanctions, because otherwise they would not be able to produce and manufacture as many drones as they do. because the sheer volumes of them launched at Ukraine are incredible. Meanwhile, Ukraine and Denmark are developing AI-driven interceptor drone. Ukraine and Denmark are collaborating in the development of a next-generation drone interceptor powered by AI. The drone is being designed to autonomously detect, track, and neutralize various aerial threats, including FPV drones, Mavic-type quadcopters, reconnaissance UAVs, and long-range Shahed drones. A Danish company is supplying advanced sensors and situational awareness systems, while Ukrainian engineers are integrating combat-tested solutions. The system will function autonomously or in a drone swarm, forming a low-cost, mobile, and effective layer of air defense. The project is already in the integration testing phase, with first models expected by late 2025. Similar efforts are also underway with partners from the US, UK, and Germany, but the Ukraine-Denmark system is touted as one of the most affordable and scalable designs currently in development. This as well should indicate to you that Ukraine is fighting a war of defense while Russia is fighting a war of offense, because while Russia is producing thousands of Shahed drones in order to attack Ukraine's infrastructure, we are producing AI-powered drones that intercept the drones that Russia sends onto us. Russia doesn't have to develop these technologies because Ukraine simply doesn't attack Russia's civilian infrastructure. Yeah, we do drone strikes on Russia that disrupt Russia's ability to attack us, but all of this is in response and in defense, not in the offense. Ukraine is defending itself in this war, and Russia is the offender. Russia is the aggressor. Russia is the country that invaded. And it is very evident even in our drone technologies and our missile technologies, because most of the weapons that Ukraine is producing are defense weapons. And also Ukraine is producing them and actually coming out with new systems and new technologies at a very rapid, very impressive pace. Anyways, that's all I have for you for today. I hope you enjoyed this brief, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, turn on all of your notifications, give this video a like, share it with a friend or a family member or whoever you think might enjoy it. And of course, leave me your thoughts, questions, and suggestions in comments down below, because I read all of them and I greatly appreciate your feedback. Till next time.